start with a statement from President Wyatt?
Yeah, just a reminder real quick before I forget. The medical clinic board, don't forget that we're still trying to find someone trying to find two people, one of which may be able to renew his term, one of which definitely cannot because he's moved out of the city. So please think about that so that we can try to get that filled for next Monday, or try to get the names in by next Monday. So, and if we need to interview, we'll interview, but so that Brookwood can do what they're looking to do.
What do they do again? What does that board do again?
It's a state-created board that deals with tax incentives specifically for hospitals and things like that. The only thing that really deals within our city is Brookwood Hospital. And so they have a project that's coming up.
The Lakeshore Foundation, sometime.
The Lakeshore Foundation. So Brookwood has a project coming up, and they need to send something to this board. And right now it's only got one out of three people on it. So there are no requirements. All the seats are at large. So if you've got someone that wants to serve on something, please let us know so that by next Monday, it will close at 4:30 next Monday.
You need to let them know that it very. Yes, ma'am.
I presume, I sent a newsletter out this weekend, and
Okay.
emailing me, why did I not talk about Lancaster? So I just want to, we are on spending freeze until mid-year review, is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Until I hear otherwise.
But Lancaster is teed up and ready to go, as soon as we are ready to go.
I know we have gotten an estimate for that.
Okay.
So I know the pricing and the contractor's ready to go. Whether or not that is the next project, I'm kind of waiting to hear from y'all.
That is the next project. I know the same.
It's not the
That
next
is
Well,
not
the
the next
Salter,
project.
they're the same contractor, is my
No.
understanding.
No,
No,
no.
Salter was approved way before.
Yes.
Well, I do know that, but I thought Salter was going into design, and he could knock out Lancaster while he was going to Salter. mean,
That
well,
was not my understanding.
No, I really thought that's why.
I think Salter was supposed to get built first.
First.
Oh, I know it was. No, there's no question there. No, I do know that.
Well,
But I thought it was in design.
I think this is the issue.
Okay,
That because Salter is so expensive, it needs to actually get built to make sure that the money is there before the money gets gobbled up by little projects.
Okay.
And then we put off Salter for another year, which would be year 4 of putting it off.
yeah, I do know that. I do know
So
that.
I
yes.
think that was the issue is, let's get Salter built, and then Lancaster's the next one to get built after that, which shouldn't be a problem with the money from this year. But we need to make sure that that's the case because Salter has to be bid. We just don't know exactly what that cost is. We've got an idea, but we don't know exactly what it's gonna be.
Okay, so Salter can go out to bid and be in design, and then you know how much the money's gonna be, so then you could do another project, or are you gonna wait until
We'll
the project
talk
is
then.
done? Okay, well, that's what I'm asking, is like, do we have to actually wait till the sidewalk is done before we move on?
I think we at least have to wait until we get it bid out and get it under contract, and then we can talk about
Okay,
we'll see where that number is and then talk about Lancaster.
okay, all right, I need to communicate, because we were ready to go on Lancaster
I know.
several times last fall, so
I
I do
know.
need to communicate that. I had lots of.
If you wanna tell them, we've been ready on Salter
I
for 3 years.
do
so
tell
you
them
can
that. I
them
do tell them that, because I think Salter was around before I
Yeah.
was, so I do know that.
In terms of Salter, we also need to get a contract from, I think Clark Bailey is the one who's gonna design it. He's not sent us a contract yet for the design work.
Barry, you
Make
wanna
sure
follow
he
up with
does.
them?
Yeah, okay. Okay, Wyatt, I'm gonna leave you, should I just leave you up here and jump down real quick? I can go out of order.
Sure.
Or actually, let me knock this one out real quick. 300619, request to consider ordinance to govern appearance of small cell antennas. Counselor Gwaltney?
I was still researching some of the specifics around metal poles, so we at least have something tangible to put in there.
Okay.
And was gonna work with Mr. Kendrick about any additional items. One thing I would like us to do, I'd like to see, I've noticed a lot more poles popping up around town. And one of the things I think that's important, in addition to aesthetics, is that we're driving these poles to secondary pole lines instead of being the first choice to place new poles. So this is one of the things I mentioned to Director Pugh, was that I'd seen a couple that went in that were close enough to other pole lines where they could have put it on the secondary line. That way we wouldn't be getting a new pole in an area that might have a decorative street light in the meantime. So I'd like to see, in addition to this item, this is kind of tangential and not really reporting related, but something for engineering to say, okay, we went out and did a field survey, you know, there is a secondary pole line, or really it's just a pole line with a primary on it, that they could move that to, instead of placing a new pole somewhere where there's no pole line. Does that make
Yes, sir.
sense?
Yes, sir, it does.
So, I can work with the mayor on that piece.
Okay, so do you want me to carry this over, or you don't want to send this to the table, do you? You're still working on this kind of actively?
I can probably knock it out in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll just continue carrying it over then. All right, so we're gonna carry over 300619. Okay, I'm gonna jump then to 130221, request for consideration of changes to the landscaping and tree requirements, Councilors Gwaltney and Andrus. We're gonna carry this one over. I sent out today what the Planning Commission sent, so everybody should have that in your inbox. And Mr. Kendrick is working on a sort of a comparison. We have heard from Amy Milam, who was instrumental in putting a lot of ideas together in the tree ordinance that was sent over a couple of years ago. Councilor Gwaltney, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay, so we're going to carry that one over, but be prepared
Just
to talk about that.
Excited to have it back. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just before we moved on, I just wanted to ask a question. If eventually, will this be a public hearing for these changes, or no?
It will be because it's zoning related.
It's a zoning ordinance, has to go to the planning commission first.
It's come back from the Planning Commission.
Yeah, it's already, so I was just wondering if we could go ahead and work towards setting the public hearing.
Well,
Since it would be-
So,
No, I wouldn't think
it's
we
been
could
so long,
yet.
I have no idea. Planning Commission had their public hearing based on the fact that it was an amendment to the zoning ordinance?
It was before my time.
In
so I don't know.
September, yeah.
Oh, they did not have a.
They didn't have a
not,
public
no, they
hearing in
didn't.
September.
There's been no public hearing.
No.
They made recommendations based on something they've had for a year and a half.
At least.
So we're gonna have to send it back to the Planning Commission?
No.
If it's an amendment to the zoning ordinance, they have to have their public hearing before we have our public hearing.
But they passed it out of the planning
They passed
commission.
that up a committee.
And it came through the planning commission's regular
They didn't have
form,
a
I thought.
public hearing.
I'm not saying, all I'm saying is in order for it to be a valid zoning ordinance, it's gotta have had a public hearing. If it
This
did,
is-
I'm fine with it.
did
If
not
it
have a-
didn't,
Absolutely did not have a public
Okay.
hearing.
Well, then,
It did
hang on a
not.
second. I just want to clarify. This came out of the planning commission back in like November and was never referred to us until recently.
Only,
So-
only because we asked for it.
Well, I get we asked for it. What even triggered it to be ready for us then? Nothing. So if they didn't make any action on it, they really haven't done anything. Do you see what I'm saying? If the planning commission hasn't referred it from committee to the planning commission, nothing's been done.
It was in a subcommittee, as I understand.
Yeah, that's what I meant,
I wasn't
subcommittee.
involved, but that's where it came from. There's a report from the subcommittee.
In either the September or October planning commission meeting, they discussed it and voted on it.
You have to have a public hearing to amend the zoning
Yeah.
ordinance.
So
Oh, I
they,
just
so
thought
they,
you
they
were
messed it
saying
up,
yeah,
basically.
no,
They
It-
discussed it, certainly, but they did not.
So they
schedule
messed
it
up their
for
own
a
process.
yes, I think what we're saying is it may be that the planning commission missed a step, unfortunately. And so we may have to send it back for them to take that step, set a public hearing, have the public hearing, and then send it back to us.
There will be
for
a
our
series
public
of
hearing.
Public hearings because it's for the
Yeah,
zoning
otherwise it's not a valid zoning ordinance, so,
Well, then we don't even need to discuss it until they've actually made a recommendation.
correct. If they haven't had a public hearing, then we need them to do that before we take it
Bolt
on.
on another 6 months to
They
the
have not had a
process.
public
Because they
hearing.
could
They have
theoretically
2
change it
years.
as a result of their public hearing.
So they need to, what they've sent back to us, they actually need to go ahead and we had Fred, I guess I can reach out to Fred tomorrow,
Yeah.
put that
yeah,
back on the
please do, yeah.
agenda. Will it not be on the March agenda then? I guess just tomorrow night.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, I would entertain a motion then to move this to the table.
Motion to
Yes.
table.
Do I have a second? Second from Counselor Nels, motion from Counselor Gwaltney, second from Counselor Nels. Sure, yeah,
Sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
This has been going around for 2 years.
Yeah.
2.5.
Quite aware.
Amy Milam sends her comments, planning commission sends their comments. I would really suggest that the council kind of take it by the horns here and determine what you want. You got comments from the planning commission, from Amy Milam, and the public, whoever's been interested in it for more than 2 years.
Mhm.
If you send it back to the planning commission without some guidance or direction, you're gonna get it back, and then you're gonna start the process over again. But the council's gonna have to, before we publish it,
other words, put something together that incorporates our comments, send it to the planning commission for their review and public hearing.
It's certainly your call, but you're not getting it.
I agree, yeah, I'm,
But that's
you tell me the
essentially what
procedure we need to
did.
go
So-
through.
And I'm not being argumentative, Mr.
Yeah.
Kendrick, but that's the most frustrating part of this. That's essentially what we did. We paid a consultant
Yeah.
to build this thing. We sent it to them. They
Yeah.
decimated it. Now they're returning us something that we have to figure out what the hell they've done to it.
Well, somebody's
So-
gotta figure out at some point.
It's like just a crazy loop. Like my head spins right now. And what it's gonna take to get this tree ordinance passed.
Not-
But they
not to
didn't send
further-
it procedurally in the correct order. They didn't do the right thing to do to send to us.
I don't know that they did.
I know they did not. We would have known that, had it would have, it would have
It
come
would have
to
come
us.
If it was this
automatically
term,
to
you
us.
would, because you were there.
Yeah, no, well, not, it has not been since November.
Okay.
It has not been since November.
Well,
The other thing that complicates it somewhat is there are new members on the planning commission that weren't
Correct.
a part of the original process.
let me make this suggestion.
Okay.
Mr. Pugh, can you confirm one way or the other whether the planning commission did or did not do a public hearing
Yes, I
for
will.
what the current draft is?
The draft that was sent to you had comments. It wasn't in the ordinance form, you could even have a public hearing.
Well, then
That's,
if that's the case, then that answers
What I
it.
sent to you, if you
Yeah.
sent it out today,
Yeah.
is a definition section, and there's just comments.
Yeah, well, on the back of it,
I sent you a draft that I tried to take any Mullins,
yeah.
but that's not what the planning commission.
So then the committee just needs to decide whether or
So-
not it wants to try to incorporate those comments into an ordinance or send it back to the planning commission to incorporate those comments.
It's their comments.
I understand.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
Okay, so procedurally, what, the purpose of the Planning and Development Committee is to do exactly what Mr. Kendrick is suggesting. And that is,
I'm not suggesting it's
well,
required.
okay, well, so, in light of that, I feel like that the Planning and Development Committee needs to take the draft that was sent and work off of that, gather additional comments from anyone that they deem appropriate, make those changes, and provide that direction before we send it back to the.
Back to the planning commission. Okay,
So I
so,
think, I mean, the work
Okay.
needs to be done here before we send it. So we need to look at that and provide comments back to you and try to incorporate everything that Mr. Kendrick has heard and what we've heard through this 2-year ordeal, get those in, and then we're gonna have a new planning commission, or new members of the planning commission. Send it to them and just say that we'd like for you to look at this, and here's a procedure, that you need to go through. You know, talk about it, set the public hearing, take those, and then if there are any additional changes, make those, and then send it back to us.
okay, so, Mr. Kendrick, back to the original part of the whole, where we were, which is you were gonna put together, well,
I've taken in a first draft what comments Amy Milam sent, the planning commission, and try to put it into one document, but I don't know if it's what you want. To be quite honest with you, every time we get something back, Amy rewrites it, then the planning commission rewrites that.
I think Amy replied to.
Yeah, we've got her
Yeah,
feedback.
Amy's
It's
pleased and ready to
pretty
move on.
moderate. Just a few minor grammatical
So if
things.
you'll send that back out to us, I can send it out to the committee, and then what you put together, and then we can talk about it.
What I sent you Friday,
Yeah, I didn't get a,
I sent it to you and Andy,
Yeah, I think I've got it.
that was what the planning commission sent, is what I sent out.
no, I sent you a first draft of the ordinance, and said, this is a first draft, it's in rough form.
Yeah, it was,
I sent you the planning.
3:53 p.m.
That I sent Andy in November. But then I sent you a draft of an ordinance, and told you it was a very rough
Yeah,
draft.
okay, I apologize, I was waiting, I thought, I didn't know you were ready for that to go out to everybody.
Well, I'm not.
Okay, well, that's why I didn't send it out, so do you wanna work on this again, and then,
I really need y'all's guidance about what you want.
okay,
It's not what I want.
Yeah, so he's already gathered all
Yeah.
that, so we just need to read it and provide feedback back to you.
okay,
as
okay.
chair.
All right, so
And then
I'm gonna send, then I will
and then
send
we can
this
refer
out.
it to the planning commission.
Yeah, I
Sorry, there was somebody online.
Okay, so Mr. Kendrick, what you sent me and Andy on Friday and Alex, I'm going to send that out to everyone, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, all right, I did not think that was ready for you, I did not think you wanted me to send
It
it
is
out.
not ready. I will tell you,
It's
as I
rough.
told you in my email, it's a very rough draft,
Yeah.
where I just took all the comments and tried to put them on a piece of paper.
Gotcha, okay,
But if you have comments to that first draft, it is a working draft. It's not a final draft.
right.
It's not something I would recommend that you send it back to the planning commission. for
No,
approval.
Yeah.
exactly, okay, I got you, okay. Well, then, let me say this procedurally, go ahead, Counselor Botany.
After you.
Well, I was gonna say, I know you made a motion and Counselor Nelm seconded it, and it now sounds like that is not the direction that we're going,
I
so
was-
how do we reverse the course of action? Yeah,
I was gonna recommend carrying it over.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
To table it.
okay.
Is there a second?
Counselor Nelm? Do we take a vote on that? Okay, all right, so
So-
we are going to carry this over. Yes, go ahead,
Can,
Counselor
can
Botany.
I request that you set a date for feedback to be collected so we can review it in the next
Oh.
committee meeting? Because I'm
Let's,
beyond tired
is it
of
okay?
waiting
if-
on this
No,
ordinance.
I'd like to wrap this up in 2 weeks, can we do that?
I'd say next Monday.
To
People
have
can-
comments to me by next Monday to
Mhm.
discuss at the next committee meeting?
Yep.
Yeah,
That way we can catalog them,
please.
take the comments, have them all cataloged into the ordinance, and have something we can vote on to send to the planning commission.
Yeah, I'm with you. Is everybody good with that? I'll send that all out tonight to everybody. Yes, Counselor Jones?
Okay, are there recommendations you have that have not been shared?
No,
In your department, anyone in your department maybe has some other ideas on making it more efficient, anything like that? Okay.
No.
Counselor Jones, we've spent hours with them.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just
okay.
wanna make
Yeah.
sure.
Like 2
that
years
we're-
ago?
that,
Okay.
you know,
Hours.
someone says,
Train is
"Oh, well,
moving."
why
I
am I-
meant to share that with you, I just wanna make sure, you know, we had everything, we had all of your.
no,
feedback.
sir.
What I received came from Vicky. That's the-
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's right.
All right, so we will carry over 130221. Please, by next Monday, if you could get me your comments on what I'm going to send you tonight, and then we will discuss it and send it out at the next Planning and Development Committee meeting. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Pugh, I'll keep you up here.
Okay.
170221, public hearing set for March 29th for consideration to rezone property at 2713 18th Street South from a mixed-use district to C4 retail shopping district. Applicant Mike Moran to facilitate the development of a new restaurant. Planning Commission voted this out 8-0 for a favorable recommendation of the rezone.
I think it was actually 7-1.
Oh, this is 8-0 here, okay.
I know it says 8-0, but it
Yep,
was 7-1.
okay. So that actually was a 7-1 vote, favorable recommendation for the rezone.
That's correct.
Yeah, anything to share with us before we make a motion to send that out?
I don't, nothing specific unless you have a question.
No, anyone have a question for Mr. Pugh?
I do have a question, as
Go ahead, Ms. Counselor Gager.
So, just in general, the way this happened, this is about the restaurant, that's right there beside the hotel. And it was, zoned mixed use when it was part of the hotel development. And then at some point, a couple of years ago, the decision was made that it was not gonna be the spa, and that it was gonna be a restaurant. And when that happened, and before it started being built, is there a reason that it didn't get rezoned at that point?
Well, okay, I don't know how much of the conversation you were in on, but there were some extraneous notes that were left on the development plan that needed to get cleaned up anyway. But we didn't see those notes until after the process had already started. But what this does is it brings, where Edgar's is, it brings that in line with the rest of 18th Street as a C4A, so it's consistent all the way through.
So did the city request it, or did the hotel person request it?
The hotel, Mr. Moran was the applicant.
Okay.
And I'll speak to it as well a little bit. So the survey that got attached to the ordinance was just the wrong survey. And it had a note on there that shouldn't have been on there. And so what this rezoning does is cleans that up and also makes it consistent with the other restaurants that are coming in that are already zoned C4A. along with most of the rest of 18th Street. So this, because this is retail, because it's a restaurant, along with the other two restaurants, Little Donkey and Rodney Scott's, that are coming in that are already zoned that, it's a matter of consistency to go ahead and just rezone it, consistent with the other restaurants, so that it's not spot zoning. It's consistent for the use.
Okay, okay. And I don't exactly understand why it didn't happen before it was built, but, okay. And, are we, and the difference, okay, and just for my information, those 3 restaurants are gonna be built with only that on-street parking around it, is that correct?
Correct.
C4A requires no parking.
Just like on most of 18th Street.
No parking lot for the bakery, no parking lot for any of them,
There's no C4A parking requirements in the city.
okay?
It's been
And
that way
we're not,
since
we're not
1986.
concerned about that.
That's an issue that can be discussed at parking, but the current zoning ordinance has no parking requirements.
But the mixed use would have had some parking requirements with it.
The parking that was a part of mixed use is still there. So
Yeah,
there's been no.
so the parking requirements when it was mixed use are the ones that are there.
Still,
And
On the
those aren't
street.
being changed.
On the street or off the street, okay, okay,
all the parking for the mixed use district is exactly intact.
okay. The main thing I just wanted to know is, as a result of this, if we were foregoing potentially having some parking, and if we were concerned about that related to the 3 restaurants. Okay.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to move out without recommendation pending the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion from Counselor Gwaltney, second from Counselor Nelms. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Pugh. I
Yes,
appreciate
ma'am.
that. Okay, I'm gonna take the shorter of the 2, and I'll come back to the last old business item. So I'm gonna start with you, President Wyatt. 210221, request for consideration of amendment of zoning ordinance to allow for consistency and public input to community gardens.
Yeah, so we have found out that there's actually sort of a strange thing with our zoning ordinance that doesn't apply equally. If you've got an empty lot that you want to put a community garden on, it goes to BZA. If you don't, it doesn't. And so I think that was the intention of the community garden when it came, was that you would, you know, consider what the people around the community garden would think, and have them have a voice, have a process where they would have a voice in the process. All the amendment that I'm talking about would do is to simply handle those things consistently. So if you want to put a community garden in, you go to the BZA. BZA has a public hearing, just like they do with if it's a vacant lot right now, and anyone can show up for that public hearing and make their voice heard, and the BZA makes a decision. So that's all it would do, would just be to handle that consistently throughout all properties in the city.
Any questions?
I don't exactly understand. Talking about just strictly the community garden at the, behind the school?
No, if you wanted to put a community garden somewhere else in the city, right now, if there's a structure on it, you don't have to ask, you don't
just
have,
do-
there's no process for it. If there is one, or if this is just an empty lot, there is a process for it. What I'm saying is, regardless of what kind of property it is and what's sitting on it, it should all go under the same process.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
it does.
Okay.
We had previously requested that and had significant time and
Brian?
effort,
Right.
spent on
Brian.
the, sorry guys, can y'all hear me?
Hold on. You got people talking on
I know,
Zoom.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Oh, hey. Yes, okay, I'm sorry, yes, on Zoom.
Yeah,
Go
they
ahead.
need to read their address and give their name.
Yes, can you please give your name and address? Thank you, I'm sorry.
Clayton and Rachel Mobley, and we currently reside at 1008 Irving Road. The property that we had, preliminary approval to create a community garden on is 214 Edgewood Boulevard, the Pink House historic property. And, go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead. You're up. Yeah.
We were just wondering, you know, we had all of that kind of pre-approved and spent significant funds to make sure we could preserve the historic nature of that. And I was just wondering, you know, since this would change the zoning ordinance that's in place for current community gardens, I would assume there would be a public hearing to discuss changing any zoning ordinance before that was able to be done by the by the city council. Is that correct? There'd still have to be a public hearing before y'all can change like a zoning ordinance?
There would actually be two. There would be one at the planning commission level and then one at city council.
Okay, gotcha. So if this were to pass tonight, then we would have the ability to, you know.
Absolutely. If this is, so actually it wouldn't pass tonight, it would just come out of committee. If the committee chooses to do that, it will come up next week if the committee chooses to do that, it will come up next week at the full council meeting, where it would be sent to planning commission for them to review it, have their public hearing, come back to us for our public hearing, and then consideration of the same.
Okay.
If we've already been in process with following the original protocol that's currently in place, we're just trying to figure out the timeline here with being able to move forward with our plans. What are we able to, I don't know, maintain with our plans that we've already kind of made in good faith with the current protocol in place?
So have y'all pulled any permits at this point?
We have not.
Okay. So I think that the process, I don't think there's anything, I can't speak to what conversations you've had or haven't had, but in terms of the official process, you would have to have that process occur before you could move forward with it. That process is going to be subsumed by this, sort of, as we consider this amendment, and as the planning commission does, and we'll have those public hearings on the same.
Okay. Any further questions?
Understood.
So is this line item in response to what this couple was trying to do with
No, this line item is in response to the fact that there's an inconsistency in the zoning ordinance.
but
I mean, I have a question, though, just in regards to their question, right? I mean,
Councilor Lamont?
currently, there is no ordinance, right? So if they,
Yeah, there
is,
an
but
ordinance.
but
Part of the zoning.
There is an ordinance, but there's an ambiguity that creates an inconsistency.
the
there.
ambiguity, okay, so that's what we're trying to resolve.
That's
But,
what we're trying to resolve.
but the way it was stated, it was that if there's an empty lot and one wants to put a community garden, they have to go get,
That is clear.
that is clear.
There's an ambiguity with regard to.
Currently,
the
though,
other.
with a lot that is already in use or has something on it, it is not clear that whether they have to go to BZA or not.
Correct.
So I'm
And
assuming there's precedent, though, of folks just building community gardens potentially,
There's no other community garden
There's-
anywhere.
and that's the question I want to, and so, that-
the only community garden is the one up by the middle school,
okay.
and which was what the ordinance was passed for.
Mhm.
There's an ambiguity as to what would happen. I don't think when they passed the ordinance that they intended to allow for anyone to just declare
Sure.
their home a community garden without input from neighbors.
Sure,
And,
sure.
and I think that's what the ordinance was intended to do, and I think that's where the ambiguity lies. It's clear as to an empty lot, and I probably should use the word ambiguity rather than inconsistency, but.
Right, because I think that,
that's-
you know,
That's what we're talking about.
I just, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I just didn't want to ensure that we're not changing rules in front of, for people who are already in the middle of a process, right?
Sure,
And so,
sure.
just looking for consistency.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to send out without recommendation pending a public hearing.
So moved.
Wait. There's not
Oh, wait.
there's not a public hearing yet.
Yeah, not.
It's
Oh.
gotta go, we would be sending it out
Okay.
to full council to send to planning commission.
Okay,
That's
okay.
what my head was.
So the motion, I'm sorry, the motion I need is to send this out to the full council next week to send to planning commission. I apologize.
without a recommendation. Second.
Motion from Counselor Nelms, second from Counselor Gwaltney. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 5-0. Whew, it's a rough night. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not on my A game. I apologize for that. Okay, old business 11:01:21. Request for, it's only about to get more fun. Request for consideration for city murals. Counselor Jennifer Andrus and Planning Commission Jeff Foster.
Well, it gets easy from here on out.
Yeah, I know. Well, okay. I will say that Jeff Foster and I put this on the agenda because we wanted some clarity. We wanted some consistency through the city. You know, an item came to the Planning Commission at the end of the year in West Homewood, came through the sign ordinance as a sign request, and we were trying to sort of make everything consistent citywide as far as murals go. Right now, in the rest of the city, there is no ordinance at all that manages murals, and in the fourth floor's mind, we are vulnerable to someone putting up something that's offensive or objective. So we put this on there for that purpose. I have said out loud that I am in favor of public art. I wanted to thread the needle. I wanted to figure out a way to manage content. I know you can't manage content per se, but I wanted to figure out a way to regulate, have some sort of check and balance process, but at the same time, encourage public art. I drove out to Woodlawn today and drove right by just beautiful murals all the way down First Avenue South. And I love that for our city, and I know it brings people to other cities. Hang on, Councilor Wolverton. So we took a call last week with our sign ordinance friends at Placemakers, and after an hour or so, I wasn't I mean, I know where President Wyatt stands on this, but I wasn't any further clear on what we could do or couldn't do. So I'm opening it up to the committee and the council, and I've heard from a couple committee members, and I know we all love public art. Councilor Wolverton, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know, in my mind this is feasible and potentially helps, but I guess similar to the sign ordinance right now, which puts a limit on size, right? Typically, I think a mural is going to be something that's fairly sizable, and so in most cases I would think that it would be something that would need a variance if it were to fit into the confines of a sign. I know we're not calling them signs, it's not a sign, but for the purpose of explaining it that way. And I don't know if there can be any kind of process like a development plan would be, where it locks in if they're coming for a mural and it obviously needs to be approved because it's over a certain size, that it then essentially has a development plan that's attached to it, sorry, that then it's you know, once it's approved, it is what it is, and it can't be changed from that format. I don't know if that makes sense, or how legally, if that's an avenue that's possible.
Sure, I think you can regulate size. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think that solves the problem at all, but yeah, I think you can regulate size.
I think most murals are going to be a sizable, visible entity. So if we can decide on a size with which we think the threshold might be, that will automatically trigger
I guess what
them.
I'm saying is the size isn't the issue. I don't care how big or small it is.
Sure. I think there's going to be so few that would come through that making the size so small that it triggers it automatically, or almost automatically, might be.
But even if it triggers it and it comes before us as a variance, we still can't regulate the content.
But we can regulate what they're presenting and whether or not
No, you cannot. If you start approving ones and not others, you are regulating for content according to the Supreme Court. It doesn't matter if you're doing it on the justification of size. You can't regulate content.
And everything's going to be okay until someone wants to put up a faith that no one cares for, or something that no one likes in our community, and we can't stop it. That's the issue.
I will say that Hazel had mentioned that we do have that vulnerability right now in our sign ordinance, that they could put up something, not words, but art that is considered
But a
offensive.
business could.
What's that?
A business could.
A business could, yeah.
She had, mules were initially included, but.
We took it out. But she's saying even in a business sign,
Oh, I agree with that.
that we have
I think what
vulnerabilities.
Mr. Kendrick is saying is if we disallow murals, we solve both problems.
If we disallow murals, we solve the problems.
We solve both problems.
Okay, Counselor Nelms? Counselor Sims?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up to your point, Counselor Andrus, right? Basically, like any content you're currently concerned about, it could still happen through a sign, right? I mean, so if you're concerned about content, you already have that risk. A mural just puts you at risk of that graphic or image being larger. So, you know, there's a good faith, you know, I guess consideration there of what someone will do. You know, I mean, it has not been an issue to date in a manner where, yes, there's been conversations about it, but the biggest fear, you know, has not happened in a way where, as we're talking about it being, you know, well, someone could go and do this tomorrow. I mean, to date that hasn't happened, but if you prohibit it, then you're definitely stopping all of it, you know, the good and the bad. And so that's why I think it's a worthwhile discussion to figure out, well, you know, how do you balance these things? And so one consideration from the call as well was, well, maybe you prohibit murals as far as it goes citywide from the private side, but then you start a public art program where the city in conjunction with the public has a program like Albuquerque where you do murals. You know, the city coordinates with certain property owners and has, you know, a contest or something where certain artists can use, you know, this facade to put, you know, city chosen or sponsored murals, and it becomes a public art program. So that would be one consideration, kind of balance this, where you can encourage public art, you know, make it community driven, but you're, you know, kind of cutting out some of that other risk that a lot of people are concerned about, and would allow you to prohibit other murals.
I liked that a lot, and you know, we talked about the Arts Council or the Beautification Board being the arbiters of that, which I know President White does not love that either, but is that worth a conversation with them to see if that's something that they would consider taking in their purview?
Good luck to them.
I like it. I mean, that's my question is it something that we can, you know, Nick, you're the liaison for the Beautification Board, Melanie, you're the liaison for the Arts Council. Is that something that you can discuss with them, that we bring them on board in that regard, you know, sponsoring, that we prohibit and then move forward in any way as city-owned property. Shades Cahaba is doing it. Everyone's excited about it. They've asked for it for a long time, but you know, if something like that comes up, is that something that they would be willing to take on?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, are we saying that we're going to prohibit murals and create certain exceptions based on city-based projects? Is that?
That was a suggestion from our friends at Placemakers, or that was a suggestion, and that's something that.
No, I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct, yeah. Thoughts?
I mean, a lot of this is actually, you know, new as far as what I've been looking into in research. Definitely happy to share some of what I found, like I said, with the city of Albuquerque. Also willing to, you know, talk to the Beautification Board at their next meeting, just to pose the idea of if this was to happen, would this be something the board would be interested in being a part of? I could even see it being a collaborative between, you know, possibly the Beautification Board and the Arts Council. Melanie, you're just hearing about this for the first time this evening, but what's your take on, you know, the potential of the Art Council wanting to be involved with a project like this?
Well, I haven't had a lot of They just started meeting last week. They had their first meeting since we've been around. And, you know, I think they would probably be interested, but, you know, in my mind, it's sort of, I definitely think they would be interested in being a part of that. I think it's sort of something that we decide that that's what we want to do, as opposed to asking them. I feel sure they would jump at the chance to be involved with public art project. I mean, they've talked about that. That's on that's on their list of potential goals and projects really for this year. So I don't think there's any question that they'd agree to it. It seems like the bigger question is, you know, our decision here. I mean,
No, I agree, and I still think, you know, the consideration is basically we could do nothing. You know, I think there's the consideration of prohibiting outright, you know, do nothing, come up with a public art program that also prohibits it. You could come up with a public art program and change nothing. You know, there's all types of considerations still, and you know, I like the public art component, but I don't know. I think it's a tricky situation as far as the prohibition of murals goes. I think you need to definitely increase the consistency as it relates to West Homewood's regulations now, though, and the citywide regulations.
True.
I mean, I think theirs is, what brought this on was not a
It
mural.
is,
I mean, what we decided and what I think is true is that what they were requesting was a very large sign, was it not?
I think that was the judgment, yes.
Yeah, but they were
I-
trying to
look,
call it a mural. Anyway.
And I don't disagree with Mr. Sims' last point at all. Whatever we do, we should do citywide. I think we can all agree on that. I don't think that's an issue. Understand that if we shift the burden or of arbitrating what's good and bad to the Arts Council or the Beautification Board, they have the same problem as anybody else does. They can't regulate content.
Even on something that we're sponsoring, that even if it's.
They cannot regulate content. So what we're trying to do is to do, and I understand why we're trying to do it. I think if the three of us talked about this on the phone, and I said, you know, I think we all can sit around and sort of think, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had this kind of mural here and this kind of mural here and all this stuff? The problem is that the law doesn't let us do that. And we're all trying to figure out a way to do what the law doesn't let us do. And whether it's by, you know, regulating the size and getting it before us, or whether it's shifting it to the Arts Council, the Beautification Board, all of these things are trying to do exactly what the law is telling us not to do. And what that means is, and this is my larger point, because I really do love the murals that we have. I mean, I think they're great. I think they add something to the community. I think they're valuable. But the result that we end up with, regardless of, if we don't disallow murals, the result that we end up with is you live with whatever you get, because there's no way to take it down. So whatever you get, however it's offensive to whatever group of people, it's there, and you've got it. I guess my personal standpoint is that because we are in that box that's created by the Supreme Court, we are opening ourselves up to the possibility that we could end up in a situation that is bad for the city because the city's getting branded for whatever reason to whatever group, because one person or one group of people wanted that on a wall. And to me, the risk of that and the damage that that can cause to our great city and have our city be misconstrued in such a way, that risk is so great, and the damage that can result from that risk is so great that it outweighs the benefit of the murals, which I love. But I simply don't think the risk is something that's acceptable to take for that benefit. Don't do it.
So I think that, I think it's interesting though, right? Because if we're saying it's city sponsored, we would have to put out a bid, we would like take designs, I'm assuming, and we would approve whatever design we want if we have an idea that was sponsored by the city. So in that way, we would control content to some degree, right? It's not like, well, why wouldn't we, if there is a thing that said, tell me something, the city wants something that says Homewood Love, then we would have multiple artists submit. Wouldn't we in effect be deciding which mural will go up?
And regulating content at the same time.
Well, sure, but at the same time, we would get to choose whichever one we wanted, because we would only have one wall that we would choose in a project, and we would get to lead it like any other thing, like in design.
But here's the problem. Then when either their item is not chosen, or when someone else wants to put something up on a different wall.
But if we're saying that
They
we
can't,
banned
right,
everything, we
yeah.
banned all music except for the ones that are approved.
I understand, but again, someone can still make the legal argument that we are regulating content by choosing and allowing what we want and not what someone else wants.
So the risk there, I think, is minute, that someone would sue us. Now, I understand the point that you're saying about, regulating content, but if what Councilor Alleman is saying, we have a specific situation where we have a specific contest or fun, community, whatever, and we have a list of people who have submitted artwork and we choose one, I mean, the risk of someone suing us over that is so minute. I mean, that to me is.
I actually don't think it's minute. But secondly, and even more concerningly, is, okay, the Arts Council, I'll just take, how many people are on the Arts Council, Melanie? I can't remember, is it 5?
There are more, but actually the bylaws don't say that there can be, so we need to.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. So I'm just going to say for the sake of argument that it's 5, and I don't mean to pick on the Arts Council, but since the Arts Council was brought up, I'm using it. If those 5 people choose something that they like, that most of the city does not like, or that they didn't deem offensive, but that other people deem offensive, there's nothing we can do about it. We're done. I simply don't, again, it's just an awful lot of risk for not a lot of benefit in my mind. I understand that people may have different views, and I don't.
Yeah, I think
I don't
in
dispel
terms of benefit, I think that we can argue about the benefits, because I think that I would like to say we live in a community where we promote art, where we promote the creation and creativity of folks and individuals, and that we can come up with a solution. And I get it, right? So, but to me, the benefit does outweigh what would be the risk. I mean, so we can differ in opinion
I respect that opinion. Right. I will simply say this. I don't think murals are the only way to promote art or public art. There are many other ways to do it without painting murals on empty walls. And I am all for doing those things. I just happen to think murals are not a good way to do it because in my mind, and I respect people that have a different opinion, in my mind, the risk is too great and outweighs the benefit.
Councilor Gwaltney.
I just have a procedural question. So
Yeah,
if by
go ahead.
chance we did approve murals and one goes up that the city doesn't care for, what recourse do we have to ask someone to take it down? None?
We don't.
No,
We do not have
We don't.
Okay.
And
That's
can
what
I
was
make
worried
one
about.
quick comment?
Yes, Councilor Jones.
Well,
Councilor Jones.
and I mentioned this in the last meeting, we've got to learn from the past. I mean, you would think a sign, a mural, they called it a mural that said, "You are beautiful."
Right.
You would think, how could that be, why wouldn't everyone agree?
We are in this
But I
together.
had
We're in this together.
constituents that
We
were-
are.
We're going through the roof. And we forced this guy to take, we didn't force him, but the constituents were so rude to this guy that he painted over the thing. So I'm just saying, we should learn from, it didn't work before. I mean, it flat out did not work before.
I sort of think what we learned was the court of public opinion, sometimes would take care of things, but I understand.
Which includes content, yeah.
You've got a comment from the audience.
Come in and sign in and give us your address, please.
That's right. Chris Lane, Mayfair Drive, 1763. The question I was going to ask, what is the difference between graffiti and murals?
Legally, there is none.
That's where we're going. That's where I'm gonna go with this. I mean, the artwork's fine, but then what happens when it becomes graffiti that you don't like? And just throwing a little.
Okay, well, does anyone, you've heard it all. There's not anything else to be said. We have said it all. Counselor Nell, do you have anything else you want to
I
add?
just think we need to, do the grunt work to try to move forward on something for it. I understand and totally agree with, paying attention to our past. But also, on a very light and silly note, I also bring forward my favorite movie, Coming to America. At the end of the movie, he wanted to marry, this African prince wanted to marry an American. And the wife, the queen, looked at the king and said, well, you're the king. He was like, well, who's to change this? And he was like, you're the king. And he just went, oh. So basically what I'm saying is that I think we should do a little more grunt work to try to make something like this work, because without it, I feel like we're in the same position as if we have it. It just may take a little bit more due diligence to make it happen. And it may be a little bit harder for us, and I know it may seem really simple and, minute to some folks, but it's important to a lot of people. And I just think we should maybe look forward at it a little bit longer and try to make something work. That's all. Not really.
Yes, Counselor Jones?
I say, there's not gonna be any additional information that any of us are gonna get. Well, I think we have really vetted this whole thing out. Well, I think we just need to make a decision on whether we wanna allow it or not. That's kind of where we are. I don't think another couple of weeks is gonna change,
It's definitely not gonna change President Wyatt's mind.
and it's not gonna
I've had
change my mind,
enough,
but,
I've had hours
Nick-
upon hours of conversation.
I just think we need, sometimes there are issues that there,
We just need to vote on.
You can, yeah.
Well, like
Analysis
Counselor
stuff.
Sims said, go ahead.
I just have a quick question
Aleman and
about
Overton.
Cam-
I think Aleman, you were speaking first,
Oh.
right, Counselor Aleman? Did you?
Well, I agree with Walter, right? I think that we're not gonna necessarily change each other's mind, and we already more or less know where we stand. And I think that, either way, we could either make a motion to disbar them or make a motion to approve, and we just have to figure that out, and.
Well, I will say that
and-
right now they
Or
are
someone can
approved.
educate me as to what the other motions can
Right.
be.
So what I,
No,
so
right
what I-
now, there's nothing that speaks to them.
That's right. So, but in West Homewood,
That was a sign.
There's nothing in West Homewood.
okay.
We hope.
Okay, so right now, so the options are we drop it
Okay.
or we prohibit them, basically.
Counselor
Well, I think,
Sims.
is there a way to just say that, can we make a motion to create a consistent ordinance, whether approving or disbarring murals across the city? And then the disapproving or approving, disbarring or approving is up to us today.
It would be amending the current sign ordinance.
So that we have to say,
I think we talked about just it being a standalone ordinance, didn't we?
Yes.
You would need to also amend the West Homewood ordinance, the Wildwood ordinance, and the Brookwood ordinance. They all have their own separate sign ordinance. If you want to prohibit murals in the city, we could probably do that with one ordinance. If you want to permit it, you need to have the standards that you want to permit it, put everything.
and we would need a public hearing also, right? Because it'd be changing the ordinance.
In the zoning ordinance, well, the sign,
Sign ordinance is not a part of the zoning ordinance.
right, so the sign ordinance would not require a public hearing.
Okay.
It's only when it triggers change in the zoning ordinance that the public hearings trigger.
And that has to go through the process, starting with the planning commission, then public hearing, then recommendation ordinance.
And by the same token, Mr. Kendrick, I would assume that a standalone ordinance disallowing murals would also not require going through the planning commission and all that.
No, it'd be just a sign ordinance, but unfortunately, you would probably need at some point to.
Amend the,
Where you have private sign ordinance, or you have sign ordinances as part of the zoning ordinance.
right,
To make it consistent, you need to do that, but that'd be.
after the fact. Okay.
But I think that if you want to be consistent, you need to take it out of all the sign regulations as a part of the zoning ordinance in those 3 or 4 districts.
Fair enough.
to have a motion.
Good luck with having, I'm not on.
Right, you can't make a motion.
So I can't make the motion, I will make.
I know what you're, trying to see who, going down the list here.
That's right, I'm on.
Jones, Smith.
I just realized I'm on it.
Hardin, Jones, Smith,
You can make a motion.
Wyatt.
Typically,
Okay,
yeah, that's,
Motion is positive, and you vote.
right, that's right. Yeah, okay.
You know, I mean, I've heard some discussion about, you know, that a couple of weeks won't change much, but, you know, I do have, you know, I mean, personally, I'd like to still go back and look at some things, you know, like, you mentioned Counselor Jones about the, you know, some of the prior discussion, and I've heard some of that background now, but I also just want to make sure, again, that, and I know, Counselor White, you've discussed, you know, that there's other forms of public art than murals, but I would like for something to kind of concurrently come through that both, you know, has some opportunity for public murals, and, you know, if we're going to prohibit it otherwise, I'd like to concurrently come up with something to bring that through, and I don't know that that can be done in a motion tonight. But I'm looking at the, you know, the Albuquerque example, and they do a, you know, a call for, you know, for proposals essentially where they review what could go up. So they're not basically saying what's offensive or regulating content. They're just choosing the best one. I think if we look at different, you know, opportunities within the wards, maybe we, through past knowledge, can find the best locations for those.
Oh, yeah, thank
to
you.
where they're not offensive. And so, I mean, that's my thoughts. I don't know that there's a motion at this point. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what's best going forward.
I'm not opposed to carrying this over. I said I'm not opposed to carrying this over. Counselor Nelms, Counselor Sims both have said. Wolverton, Gwaltney? I'm not opposed to carrying this over. Okay, let's carry it over. Okay, with that, we're adjourned.